Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is the Lance Neighborhood Livability Association August meeting. And I've been I hate the mic. I've been asked to remind you, please silence your phones. If you don't know how to silence them, turn them off. It's been an issue, and I get in big trouble for it afterwards. I'm going to give up on this. So tonight we have very special guests. We have Christine Drazen, and she's going to talk to us about new directions. And we have Will Lathrop, who is running for State Attorney General, and Jeff Merrick, an attorney who's reinstated his license and hopefully can help you recover from some of what the city has done to you as far as livability goes. So without further ado, Christine, it's yours.
Thank you. I'm going to hope this works. Is this thing not going to work? I have a different, quite a version. I'm going to try this one. You guys hear me? Yes. Is that better? Okay, good. Thank you for having me. I am thrilled to be here tonight. And thank you guys for meeting together and organizing and creating a forum where your voices can be heard and where your concerns can be shared, where you can share each other's burdens and you can share each other's progress and successes. We are, as you guys know, almost a year out from the last election, and it was certainly a bruiser of an election. And we're this far out, and I wonder whether or not we feel like things have changed. We have new leaders, but have things changed? Have we seen progress? Not perfection. Have we seen progress? And I would say, from where I sit, not nearly enough. We haven't seen nearly enough progress compared to what I believe we could, should, and must begin to see on our city streets and across our state. The challenges we face are the same as they were a year ago. They're very similar to what they were 2 years ago. We continue to see challenges around a growing fentanyl crisis, which is literally death at our door every single day, and the lives that it is taking are our teens, disproportionately taking the lives of our teens. Fentanyl overdoses are, in fact, a danger to the next generation. There's drugs, there's homelessness, there's crime, there's all of these same conversations that we talked about in the course of the governor's race. I have started an organization that is, in fact, an advocacy organization for the public good. Not for a party, not for a candidate, but to elevate the voices of Oregonians who want to engage, to hold the status quo accountable, to ensure that those that are elected and in power understand that we absolutely need them to listen. We need them to work together. We need them to make the kind of progress that they promised that they would make when they ran for office. And most of all, we need for Oregonians to be at the center of these conversations. When I ran for governor, I committed to fight no matter what. I said, win, lose, or draw. I'm not going anywhere. I believe in this state. I'm a lifelong Oregonian. I love Oregon, and frankly, I love my fellow Oregonians. And losing this race meant that I needed to find another way to engage and to continue to find a way to fight the fight. Like, titles don't matter. Every single day, Oregonians gather together in rooms like this, and they find ways to work together to solve local problems. They find ways to work together to make things better in their own neighborhoods and across the state. And this nonprofit is intended to be a tool toward that end. Not for a political party, not for a candidate, but to say the challenges that we're facing in neighborhoods across our state have a platform to be able to elevate those concerns to our elected leaders and to your fellow Oregonians, to try to rally voices, to try to engage and organize in support of change. And so what I am here tonight to share with you is that I am here first and foremost to continue to be a voice for Oregonians any way that I can. And tonight is an opportunity, I'm hoping, that you guys will talk to me and share with me about the kinds of issues that you're facing in your neighborhoods, what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and how you're doing. And I've heard some of that. But also to have a conversation about what you see for your own future. Where are the solutions? I personally believe that we need to have a conversation about repealing the legalization of the possession of drugs. Yes. I don't believe that the possession of hard drugs ever should have been a civil violation. Because what we have seen from law enforcement is that, am I losing it?
They didn't like the conversation.
I know. I can be louder. What we see, oh yeah, I'm gonna have to be louder. You guys tell me if you can't hear me.
It's coming back on.
Oh, it did?
Yeah.
Is it gonna be one of those things where it blasts you? But what we have right now is a need, it went out again. What we have right now is a need to get really serious about telling our leaders that we want this to be repealed. Not because we want people who are facing substance use disorder, addiction, mental health challenges, we don't want to imprison them. We want them to go into diversion programs. We have drug courts. We want people to use the resources available to us. We want people to get the help that they need. But what we see is that fentanyl, they call it addiction for a reason. It is not the kind of thing that without consequences and without repeated opportunities that people are going to be able to casually walk away. It is one of the most addictive and deadly drugs that we have ever seen. It is going to take an effort that says this is a matter of life or death for people to realize that we can't continue to have legalized drugs in our state. It is not the kind of policy that we should allow to continue. We can't continue to experiment and risk the lives of our fellow Oregonians. That's my perspective on it. From here to there, it's a very long way. In this last legislative session, there was the opportunity for legislators to take up a bill that would have referred that question to voters. To let voters take another peek at it and say, we've lived with this for a while, is this what we intended? And when we voted for this at like 58%, is this what we wanted on our streets? If the answer is no, it doesn't mean you throw out the part of the bill that funded treatment. We still need that. We're still 50th in the nation for access to treatment. You still need to figure that out. But do we have to have the legalized drug part? Do we have to have the part where police walk past people that are actively using on the streets? I was able to do a ride-along with Portland Police last year, and I said, I've never seen anyone with hard drugs. I've never seen anyone use drugs. And they said, okay, let me just show you. And they pull over, and they got out of the car, and they're like, hey, we've got a ride-along with us today. You want to come on over and show us what you're using? Sure. So they come over, and they start talking about the drugs they're using right now. And so I start having this conversation with this woman. She's 24 years old. And she has been living in these circumstances on the street. At the moment, she's living in a car with her partner. And she is actively using fentanyl. And I said, I am a mom. I'm a mom. So I'm looking at this girl. She's like 3 years older than my oldest son. And I said, does your mom know where you are? And she said, yeah, I call her. She knows where I am. And I said, you don't have a relationship? She said, my mom knows if I'm calling her, I need money for drugs. And I said, well, what is your day like? What do you do? She said, I wake up and I have one bluey. And by the end of the day, I need to have had 40. I said, how do you get that? She says, I do whatever I have to. What does that mean? I mean, I'm talking to this woman and it's in a side street. So it's not an alley, it's just a small street. And there's homes on either side. And the homes have, chain link fence in front of it. And these are small Portland cottage style homes. Those yards have little kids' trikes in them. But lining these fences are cars. that are broken down, not going anywhere, and shoved with people's belongings. And people are sitting in the front seat doing drugs, or they're sitting on the sidewalk doing drugs. And where there aren't cars, there's tents, or not, maybe not formal tents, but tarps. And there's people, and they've lined up both sides of this street. And there's enough room for the cop car to get on the middle. And I said, how do you even do this? And she's like, this is it. I can get what I need between a 2-city block where I am right now. And I just said, have you ever overdosed? Like, this is dangerous stuff. And she said, I have overdosed many times. And her street family has given her Narcan and brought her back. And I mean, this is, to me, I just don't understand it. I mean, I understand academically that addiction is the only thing, and you give up everything for that one thing, and nothing else matters. But I don't really understand it. And so I said, do you have access to treatment? Do you have access to resources? If you wanted to get clean, do you have access to resources? And she said, I have done treatment before. I'm not ready. I don't want to get clean. Not now. And we ended the conversation with me just asking her if she would just call her mom for me. Would you just call your mom? Like, not ask her for anything, just call your mom. You know, and I said, and please just take care of yourself. I get back in the cop car. That experience, that conversation with that young woman and her partner, I feel like it's probably not that unusual for some of the people that are living on our streets right now. I know everyone has unique circumstances. Everyone does. But the challenge that I see is that we look at the challenges of homelessness, and we've heard for so long housing first. And granted, housing is extraordinarily expensive in Oregon. We have a distinct challenge with keeping people able to afford a roof over their heads. But I think until we actually know the people that are on the streets, what they're personally facing, until we have a very clear sense that that 23 or 4-year-old woman has a mom that loves her and cares about her, that she is in touch with, and she's been to treatment 3 times, and she's overdosed 4 times, and she's not ready, then we can move on to the next person that might be ready. I mean, there's got to be some way to approach this. You can't leave people behind, but also you have to recognize that not every single story on our streets is someone that just can't afford their home. We can't look at it like throwing another $200 million or another $500 million into housing subsidies is going to fix what we're experiencing right now across our state. These are unique challenges. These are people. This is not just some, anonymous, faceless 15,000 or so people that happen to live here. They just magically happened. These are individuals that had a path. Here they are. It's not going to change unless we do something different than what we have been doing. We have been funding housing. We have been doing our best to give them tents and hope for the best for them. Whatever it is that we have been trying, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but it doesn't feel like it is changing enough. It doesn't feel like it's getting it done. And so I believe that neighborhoods like yours are the ones that need to be heard. And I can only imagine that you guys have stories, heartfelt stories, where you've reached out to people and tried to help. And stories where maybe you've been burned and it hasn't gone well. And times where you have felt both emboldened with grace and angry and disgust. I can only imagine that what you guys are experiencing where you live, in fact, is not heard enough. That your voices in your neighborhood, in your community, doesn't get enough focus from the people that are elected and whose job and role it is to solve problems. This is a humanitarian crisis, but it's also a problem with moving parts. And if you don't talk to the people that are affected by it, they're not going to fix it right. They're just going to do a cookie-cutter version of what they've seen done in other places, and that will not work. We need solutions that are specific to local areas, specific to the populations that are impacted, and certainly specific to the strengths and challenges of unique neighborhoods. So I am here, in fact, even though I've been talking for the last 15 minutes, I really am here to hear from you guys, answer questions if you have any, but certainly I would love to hear anything you guys want to tell me, because the advocacy nonprofit is not to advocate for, on my behalf, the things that I think, even though I've been talking for 15 minutes. It really is to be a platform for the concerns that you guys have. Do you guys have anything you want to tell me?
I have a question.
Please.
So do you have any connection with our mayor?
Yeah, I had conversations with Mayor Wheeler when I was running, but not since.
Okay.
I think that the opportunity to engage with Mayor Wheeler is one that is in a collective voice. I think that you guys would have an opportunity as a neighborhood association to be able to request a meeting with him and get one. And I believe very strongly that he absolutely has a duty to listen to you guys and to be responsive to your concerns. Have you guys requested time with him?
I think Nick was here, probably email the mayor's office or people in the mayor's office, and basically did a form letter.
Oh, you're kidding me.
All the stuff he's done, what he's doing, but you never really hear a personal response.
Does he have a liaison for community organizations?
He does.
And that person hasn't been responsive?
He did form letters.
Form letters.
I don't know if anyone here has heard back from the mayor if they email that office, but I usually just get form letters.
I'm happy to flag it for him. I mean, I'm not even kidding. I think that there is something to be said for holding people accountable to the people that they are elected to serve. And sometimes an outside voice is the best way to remind them that his duty is to you.
Go for it. Tell them that we want to get hold of it.
City regulations need to be updated to include the new behaviors and the new populations that we are seeing. Because when you see bad behavior and you call the different divisions of the city, everyone says it's not my domain, right? Yes. Everybody says not my domain, and maybe at best they might say call so-and-so, and when you call them, it's not my domain. Nothing has been updated to include the new reality of Portland.
So who do you call when you call someone? You say, someone's doing something outside my door.
So my situation is a person in an RV moved in across the street on March 27th of this year, right next to the playground of St. Peter Church, where 2 preschools exist and the kids play every day, right? And he's been running a portable gas generator every day since March 27th for 12 hours a day, a sidewalk away from the playground, right next to the St. Peter Church house where the priest lives. So we're all breathing it in. And I called everybody that I could think to call, and every single department of the city said it's not our domain, right? Everybody said that. So parking said it, camping said it, DEQ said it, noise pollution said it, nuisance said it. Everybody said it.
That's everybody.
Yeah. And then my next step was going to be, I was going to call other cities to see in this situation, in this hypothetical situation, in your city, who would deal with this. Because I think other cities are a little more assertive and aggressive around problem solving than Portland. So I was going to see what neighboring communities do.
And you asked if she called 311. Did you try 311?
I called everybody.
Yeah.
I even went to the fire station in person. I said, I got this going on.
Yeah.
What can I do around it? They're like, there's no funding around it. There's nothing else.
Well, that's a broken system.
Yeah.
That's a broken system. If it is no one's problem, it does not get solved.
Noise told me if it's not on a property, it's out of my hands. So, like in the street, you can be loud. On a property, you can't be loud.
Does he shut it off at night?
No, it runs like 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., 7 p.m. to 7. It starts in the evening and it runs all the way.
I've had it for months.
But at this point, that's his residence. And that's a lot of noise coming from his residence, even though it's on the street.
Well, if you had a lawnmower
Carbon
going,
dioxide.
100%.
We're all breathing it in.
Yeah,
And the
yeah,
kids are exposed to it.
right.
I spoke with an attorney. He's here today. Yeah, he should not be named until later. Yeah, not to focus, which was a big flashlight in my head of 4 years of nuisance as an Oregonian. And in short, because I'm sure this will be addressed, was, aside from all of us can be in that situation tonight or tomorrow, but by law, as a homeowner, we have requirements that we need to meet. And so with the negligence of ODOT and PDOT and the situations is where the focus is advised to go, where we have rights. And so thankfully an attorney will be here, because that's kind of the next step that everyone here, I feel, is at, because of we as homeowners or renters or anyone don't feel like we have the rights. There's a lot of protections for the negligence, whether it's ODOT's property, that there's no way with my 4 years of documentation, that there's no way that I would lose my house with what I've had to deal with, but all of us have had to deal with. So I had a short conversation with Jeff Merrick, and he, it was just very helpful information that put a big light in. It's not about going after anyone per se, it's about the mental health for individuals that are trying to be doing right in society, to be able to help these individuals, but the allowability of the negligence needs to be addressed.
And like this, there are lots of different ways to approach change.
Yeah.
Some are political, some are legal. Like, all of these levers matter, and they're all available to you. I think that what's interesting to me in some ways about the response to homelessness, I sat on a planning commission for Clackamas County, and we were the only county in the state to make adjustments to our land use rules to specifically create space for tiny homes that were intended to be homeless shelters. And at that time, there was a lot of discussion about where to put these and what would be appropriate, what wouldn't be appropriate. And they modeled it somewhat after Eugene has some, the start. They were kind of the original. But what was interesting to me about that conversation, which I'm so curious what Jeff's going to say later. What's interesting to me about this conversation was they were talking at the time. I mean, the concept improved, but at the time they were talking about the equivalent of plywood walls, and a window and a door and space for a bed, and no water, and a little like cadet heater in the wall, and that was it. And so for me as a planning commission member, I was like, okay, if that's how adults want to live, it's certainly better than stoop, it's certainly not on the sidewalks, but let's make sure that no children live there, that these are not adults that are bringing their young children into this space. Like, that's not acceptable. And the response from Planning Commission staff was that this is the homelessness response was a housing-related issue, and that we couldn't exclude anyone. They'd be discriminating against those folks who might have children. You couldn't discriminate against them. And so while it wasn't housing for purposes of building codes, they were exempting themselves from all the normal and appropriate, safety measures. They weren't excluding themselves from the discrimination limitations. And they moved ahead knowing that they didn't have any particular protections, that people couldn't in fact bring children to live there in the wintertime or in the summer heat or whatever. And they told us that the nonprofit providers that would take on responsibility to manage the facilities could be trusted to screen for applicants around that issue. But it's a very interesting legal question. Is it housing? Is it not housing? I mean, and for the people that are living in tents, we now provide notice as if it's a residence almost, where we're going to engage with them with particular notice requirements for when we're going to clear their tent and where their possessions might go. There's dignity and respect there. But it does seem to blur the lines where they're not bound by any of the things you and I would be bound by for our home or our emissions, but they still have some version of protections. It's a very awkward messy place to be right now.
What's District 9? When I talked to the police in New Orleans, they mentioned District 9, that it was very helpful on the East Precinct Police about 3 years ago when this really catapulted a lot. And he thought that it was interesting that he went down to New Orleans as a police officer on vacation. And he said that they have a District 9 law in New Jersey and New Orleans. And this is, again, over my head, so I don't want to bombard this conversation. But we don't have any kind of, I don't know what District 9 means. And there's a rule that basically when they provide a lot of mental health facilities, which we pretty much wiped out all of that years ago. And then if you don't show up with ID showing that you're proving that you're helping yourself, then you have to go to the next state. That's what New Jersey does. That's what New Orleans does. You can't just sit and lie and have an inhumane environment surrounding everyone. It's a broken system that creates an inhumane environment, basically. I don't know what District 9 is.
But I know what you're saying, that they do better in places, and they have justification for it.
Hi, so I just wanted to add, I actually live in the neighborhood next door. I live in Foster Powell on 80th and Powell. Just to kind of give you an idea of how hard it is to get anyone to even talk to us. My husband and I moved into our house in 2016. The pocket that I'm in is inundated with homeless to the point where, sure, are they a nuisance on the street? Of course, but they use our yard as their public toilet. We're constantly dealing with trash. That's not new. We've had reports of them stealing from people's gardens. They would steal from our yards. We wouldn't be able to leave our house without coming home and seeing our security footage of people coming and leaving. So our house was being cased. We've got emails going back from 2016 begging PBOT, ODOT, the city for some help. We're either ignored. As a neighborhood, we've actually come together and asked, can we have a sit down because our needs are not getting met because we are not a rich neighborhood in Portland, Oregon. It's pretty apparent at this point where the money goes, and it's not, we don't have it, so therefore we don't get help. So if our house gets vandalized, they trample our landscaping. I mean, the list goes on how my property gets vandalized, and it's either get ignored, there's nothing that they can do. And I've got videos, I've got photos, I've got emails going back from 2016. So we don't know how to get this sit-down meeting because everyone just simply ignores us. I don't want to have to threaten, but at this point I need to do what I need to do because I'm tired of living under that stress. So this is not new to anybody, but since I'm from the neighborhood over, I figured I should probably chime in. Every single person that we try to contact city-wise, it's just, they constantly move the goalpost. So it's like we haven't made any segue, and we've been there for 7 years. So I just wanted to add that. That's how bad it is. Portland just does not care about our little piece of Portland.
Yeah, so if Ted Wheeler is listening tonight, I think the answer is he needs to meet with you guys. He needs to hear your concerns.
He does.
And he needs to begin to respond to these challenges. They do them in large cities across the nation. You can go to all kinds of other places, New Orleans, Austin, you pick your city. They have, in fact, been more responsive to the people that live there. It's not that the populations are dramatically different. It's that they have systems in place to be responsive to their own citizens and to make sure that your quality of life actually has the ability to continue to be sustained as we address these larger population challenges that we don't yet have our arms around.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I feel like I'm being taxed, but I don't show for it. Like taxation without representation, that's exactly how I feel. My money is going out the door, and I have to be a public restroom, and my gardens have to feel the homeless. It really grinds the gears.
Not only do you have nothing to show for it, you have negative return.
Yeah, and I have 4 years of the same thing. The mental health alone and the lack of support is, finding someone that can help represent us with a strong authoritarian voice, so to speak, I guess, like an attorney or someone, to give us those helpful information. Because Wheeler says 2 months to meet, and 2 months to be considering since 2016, or for 4 years of documentation for me to protect myself. There's our statute of limitations that I was informed about and stuff, but I still shouldn't give up for the protection of mental health of the time that I've been putting into it. You know, if we're not going to get any, it's just, a lot of people just, the people that were going to come here chose not to come here because they just don't have any hope anymore to speak. They just don't feel like they're being supported.
Yeah, it's past time for your elected leaders to listen to you.
The reality is, if we met with Mayor Wheeler
16?
or Commissioner Ryan or
Yeah.
Maps or any of them, they might listen to us. They won't do a damn thing. That's the reality. They won't do a damn thing because they know exactly what's going on. Wheeler ran on in 2006. He was going to solve homelessness by 2018. He said earlier this year he was going to end homelessness by 2024. These are nothing but lies.
I don't think the homeless is going to end. I think it's the support for the citizens that needs to change.
Yeah.
It's not going to end, but it's also getting a voice, a critical mass, so to speak, of people that have values that we all do here. We're scared.
Yeah.
We're concerned about the homeless too. No one wants to see everyone constantly being homeless. It's a sad situation. But we don't, if we use an authoritarian thing or somebody that has a higher power for our voices instead of just a citizen, unfortunately, I think we'll have better impact.
I'm just saying, meeting with Wheeler is a complete waste of time.
Oh.
We've got to stick together and figure out on our own what we're going to do. Because they're not going to do a damn thing for us.
It's bigger than Portland. It's a global issue. It's done on purpose. It's to demoralize us. And it shows a willful ignorance of, well, actually, they know exactly how to cure this problem. You don't tolerate drug addicts. They're liars, they're thieves. We all know this. It's part of the disease. Why are we ignoring this part of the disease? And as I've listened to a guy from San Francisco and a guy from Portland, they're both on YouTube, who are leaders in the drug community, they both said, it's not housing. You'd have given me a house when I was using, I'd have had a shooting gallery in there, I'd have a brothel, I'd have all the street people in there using and abusing. And that's what they're doing to us, and we're paying for it. We need to reopen the mental hospitals and people should be mandated to go in. We should have, if they want to live outside, we have to be away from society because they cannot live in society by definition of their disease. We are not saving anybody. We're potentiating the problem. And it comes from Washington because they're allowing free cartel movement across our border. They're coming across now with long guns, and this is cartels, and they're bringing drugs and children with them. This is a societal problem in the West, and it's from this tolerance. Oh, I don't want to say anything. We're breeding a load of people who can't say no to anything, and there's no will. They look on the taxpayer as a cash cow. Oh, we'll finance it. Oh, let's pay more money for this. No, you've ruined our parks. You've closed our mental hospitals. Our police and fire are disproportionately taking care of these people.
Yeah.
No, it's time to say no. And cities and counties where they've said no, they don't have this kind of problem. And I'm afraid Justin Aldean or whatever his name is said in that song, no, grow a backbone, Mr. Mayor, and the rest of you.
Yeah. Let's just.
I think probably a few people will agree with me, in all due respect to you. Our mayor doesn't give a crap about us.
I'm hearing that loud and
That's
clear.
exactly right. He doesn't. He ran the first time on with certain things that were off-street parking. With all of the new apartments going up, there was a percentage. It wasn't like one parking place per unit. It was like 0.7 something. That was, he was going to solve this problem. Nothing was done. It's like he says it, whatever it takes at the moment, and then he goes on his merry way. And he just doesn't care.
I think it's been done. It's just been the once forgotten suburb here has been the one getting hit, and then all the way down, clear down to probably, if you were to just take a bike ride on the Greenway, that taxpayers paid for to be a less carbon footprint for a market like Amsterdam, can't bike along the greenway.
No,
Clear from Foster all the way to Pascal, clear to Cletus.
It's
It
not
goes
safe,
all the way, 90 seconds or whatever. I just think that it gets shoved through dollars. The lower the tax you pay on your home, unfortunately, the more ignored you are. That's the only thing I can wrap my brain around. There's no
Well,
way
we're
to
easy.
fight.
We're easy prey. We don't have the money to whatever, so we're easy. We just send them to our neighborhood.
sorry.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean,
Oh, I'm proud of
they're
you.
yeah, and they're shutting it over here. Is what I see.
You guys, then, okay, then this has to be, then the answer has, then your answers, if your answers aren't direct political action because your elected leaders won't listen to you, and I'm getting that loud and clear. You guys are not the first people to feel this way about Ted Wheeler, by the way. But also your options then are direct citizen engagement on the ballot, legal measures. At some point you can't arrest people yourselves. You cannot physically remove these RVs on your own. There has got to be a pathway that's the productive way for you guys to engage directly if you have to go around your leaders. And also someone should run against Ted. Who is it? I'm looking. If you guys feel this way about your mayor of the biggest city in our state, and I imagine you guys aren't the only ones that feel this way, you need to have real choices as well.
I agree with that. We have to.
There's a powerful anti-law and order grouping, and we saw it with the Andy Knows
Right.
decision yesterday
Yeah.
with this Antifa supposed lawyer. That is the most disgusting thing
Yeah.
I've ever seen. We are lost. We are lost unless we can turn this vote around ASAP.
Well, also, let's do repeal Measure 110.
Yes. So
Good
how
plan.
can you do that?
So that's it. That is, it has to be a citizen initiative. The legislature declined to take action. The legislature could have repealed it directly, or they could have referred it to voters. They declined to do either one, which means there's the opportunity to collect signatures. Jeff and I were talking about that. People are discussing it. People are evaluating it. What people need to do is actually begin to do it. And then you at least have a message to your leaders that enabling drug abuse out, just like open air drug markets, is not acceptable to people that live in this state. And you start somewhere. You have to start somewhere. The problems are massive. And if you do not have people that you can go to that are in elected office with the levers of power at their fingertips, that you feel like you will ever be heard, if it is screaming into the void, you have to go around them.
So Christine, is that something that New Directions can do?
So I am considering how to get engaged in that issue. Here's the thing. If you're serious about repealing it, Portland has to be the one to want it. Because if Portland isn't serious about it, it will go down and we will have it forever. Because whoever raises their hand and tries to get it repealed, if they don't succeed, there won't be a second shot. Portland has to want to repeal 110.
We've heard in these meetings that there are people that helped write that bill that now say we would do. And so there is a movement
Yeah.
of people that are wanting to reevaluate that.
And people I have talked to really, really, really want to repeal it.
It's killing our society. It's killing us here in West.
Yeah.
We have no teeth. We are a low-income,
Yeah.
diverse community without a voice because will not meet with us. He sends people in to meet with us, and then promises, and they break their promises every single time.
Your local leaders should be ashamed of themselves.
They should be ashamed, but they're
ashamed
not.
of themselves.
They take advantage of less.
But
They
what
send
kind
them
of
to
influence?
our area.
What kind of influence is Washington going to have on us? Because they couldn't even restrict fentanyl use.
Yeah.
They're arguing on themselves. So there's communists running that way as well. There's communists running this way. But they'll just buy the drugs
Yeah.
in bulk and ship them over here. We're so close.
So I completely hear what you're saying. The drug trafficking that's coming into our state through our borders right now is overwhelming. Our numbers are overwhelming right now. But it doesn't mean that we don't need to clean up our house here in Oregon. So there's pick your problem, right? Pick your challenge. But you still have to engage locally. You still have to look around at our little state and say, what can we do here? Because we're coming up on an election for Washington too. I mean, you know, we're a November election, we're a May primary, we're gonna have the opportunity to pick our president in the next cycle. We're gonna have the opportunity to, you know, elect people for Congress, elect people that support your values. And it's got to start in Portland.
So we have a group in Portland that's called People for Portland, and they've been really at the forefront trying to keep the pressure on our local officials.
Yeah.
Regarding the homeless, well, I don't know, but I'm just wondering if you've been in touch with them, or because they've been really anti the county because they're not spending the money appropriately and all that stuff.
I think People for Portland has done a good job engaging on issues in Portland. I wouldn't say that they've changed any hearts and minds at the city government level just yet, but they do have the opportunity to spend money and elevate these concerns in a way that few others can and do. So I think every organization that you guys can get that reinforces this concern and backs your play is useful to you, but you got to start somewhere. And do you want to start by, you know, re-electing your local city leaders? Do you want to start by working to repeal Measure 110? If you can't get an audience that's productive with your local electeds, you can't give up. You have to choose your next path. Maybe the path is to work with Jeff and sue the pants off of all of them, but you got to choose a path. There has to be a path. And my perspective on this is I will always advance your concerns and your ideas and the experiences you guys are having here. But also there needs to be a path that meets your needs in this community. What do you want to achieve? Do you need your streets cleared? Do you need the noise issues down? Do you need to feel more safe? Do you need more police officers? Do you need your usual nuisance regulations enforced? What do you want to achieve?
All the above.
Hard to choose.
It's almost like taking a walk with people that have been here to their neighborhood and filming, walking them, trying to walk their kids, or taking a bike ride, and just be a part of where we live.
Yeah.
Not just having to text and go, you know, it'll be 2 months before we can come out. No one's coming to our neighborhoods to actually walk our neighborhoods or streets. I can't leave the house without feeling that.
You know, safe. And I worked in the city. I mean, I know this is all pockets over there and over there, but if it would be nice to have the officials actually come into our experienced it actually actively. Take a bike ride, you know? Oh yeah, I mean, I'm in my car.
I was gonna bike here and I'm in my car.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wouldn't say everyone's really aggressive. There's a lot of needles, there's a lot of trash, there's a lot of safety. I wouldn't, you know,
And you just,
to be honest, I mentally just, you know, there's points where you just don't want to keep looking at it. And it's not that I don't want to not look at the individuals,
Yeah.
but they've been enabled a lot to continue to get deeper and deeper into addiction. You know, and it's just one that's just probably sometimes just not healthy looking because, you know, it's hard to shut it off all the time.
yeah. I know David,
So please
he's
don't.
getting off the hook.
Yeah, don't shoot the messenger, but we have 2 other guests tonight that we hope to allow to speak. So I'd like to give the floor to Will Lathrop.
Thank you guys.
Good evening. Thank you so much, Shar, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you for all for being here. I'll just ask you. Here, let's do it this way. I'll ask you a few questions. I'll tell you a little bit about myself because I'm kind of new to the scene, and then you can pepper me with your softball questions after all that. So let me start by asking this: who here knows who our current Attorney General is? About half of you. Okay, that's pretty good. She's only been 3 terms in the position. Raise your hand if you think if I passed out an elementary quiz, 10 questions, they could pass at least with 60% on what an Attorney General actually does. Oh, the lawyer thinks that's good. So we got even less people. One of the issues when I'm running for Attorney General of Oregon, one of the issues of running for Attorney General is it's been out of sight for so long. Many people don't know who that is. They don't know what they do, and they don't know how to hold them accountable. If you're worried about crime, addiction, and drugs, which there were some subtle messages that maybe would lead me to believe that you are, you should probably look at the role of the Attorney General as Oregon's top cop, especially over organized crime, and what is and is not being done. And if you're frustrated by corruption at the lowest level, or even all the way up to the state level, and you wonder why nobody ever gets in trouble and nobody ever goes to jail for the things that they do, and when you're in public service, you should probably look at the role of the Attorney General. And if you're in business or you in some facet of your life, you're frustrated by bureaucracy and government overreach, and you feel like the government isn't following the law and they're not following their own administrative rules, then you should also, once again, look at the role of the Attorney General in Oregon. So, again, my name is Will Lathrop. I don't know how I ended up in a speaking engagement where I'm speaking after Christine Drazen, but I'll take it. I'll take it with grace. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself and what I hope to do. So, I'm from Joseph, Oregon, which is the Portland of Wallowa County. If you've ever been there. There's 1,000 people there. So my dad's a cattle rancher. He still is a cattle rancher. I'm a 6th generation Oregonian, so I definitely have that rural blood. But I came to the west side as a young man, went to Willamette College of Law, and have lived in the Willamette Valley my whole adult life with my wife. My first job was working in Yamhill County, which is Big Bendel, as a prosecutor. I was recruited away to go to Marion County in Salem to prosecute child sex abuse, and for a number of years I was on the Special Victims Unit, prosecuting child sex abuse, homicide, domestic violence, and adult assaults as well. And from there I was recruited away to go to Washington, D.C. to do that at a national level. And in Washington, D.C., I ran into an organization called International Justice Mission, or IJM. Has anybody heard of IJM here before? You have? One person?
From you.
From me. And you remembered. I did a good job. So IJM is the world's largest anti-human trafficking organization. And they recruited me to go lead an office in northern Uganda, which is East Africa. Uganda had this 21-year civil war. After the civil war, there were a big group of widows and orphans from the war and ex-militants. And the ex-militants were pushing the widows and orphans off their land. And the government was struggling to do anything about it. So they asked my team and I to come in and help to kind of bridge the gap. So we rescued these widows and orphans out of, basically they were living in the jungle, get them back to their lands. And then we'd arrest the violent perpetrators and we'd prosecute them in the court of law. And I did that for a number of years. And then they moved me to West Africa. And for the last 5 years, I've been in West Africa, which is Ghana, was the country I was living in, and, rescuing child slaves and prosecuting slave traders and masters. I led several offices in Ghana, essentially intervening in cases of human trafficking. It wasn't my first time doing human trafficking because part of my caseload when I was in Salem was human trafficking. I did human trafficking cases then as well, but there weren't that many. Over my time with the prosecution, it was a small part of your caseload. I was very surprised to come back to Oregon and find out that human trafficking is becoming a serious issue in our own state. It's actually quite shocking. Amongst the other things that you're talking about, that is one that has sprung up. So in my time in Ghana, I was working with the government at the highest level to try to build up the bones of their criminal justice system, to be responsive to the poor, and to try to protect people from everyday violence. And what I hear all of you talking about is everyday dysfunction and everyday violence, and it paralyzes all things: business, family, faith. All things sort of depend on the ability to go outside your house and feel safe. And many of you probably, if you're honest with yourself, you don't feel safe and you don't think that your property is safe either. So when IJM every year would send me back, I've been overseas for 8 years. Every year IJM would send me back for a month or two. My residence has always been in Oregon. I'd spend part of that time in the east side with my dad. I spend the rest of the time on the west side with old friends and colleagues, and I have been shocked to see what you're living in. It probably was about 2016 was the first year I started to notice. I came back to Portland and I walked around and I said, something is wrong here, because when I was recruited away to go to Washington, D.C. in the first place, the reason why they want a prosecutor out of Oregon was Oregon was thought to be on the forefront of victim protection. Can you believe that? That was 2014. Oregon was thought to be on the forefront of victim protection, and I watched us give it all away. We went from first to worst. I sat in Ghana and I read the New York Times, the LA Times, the Wall Street Journal, and all of them were cataloging this government's, at the highest level to the lowest level, cataloging this government's inability to protect people from addiction and violence and petty theft and vandalism, and it was embarrassing. It's been embarrassing for all of us. So I made the decision I couldn't continue to work so hard to try to build up justice systems in other countries when Oregon, I'm a 6th generation Oregonian, I think I mentioned already, this is not a place I will ever leave. I couldn't do that when Oregon is suffering so badly. So I decided to come back and run for Attorney General. And I want to note that one thing I noticed through all of that time, I know that you're all probably very fond of your DA, Mike Schmidt. Raise your hands, no? Okay. I noticed he gets a lot of blame, the police get a lot of blame, Kate Brown got a lot of blame, and probably Kotek and Dan Rayfield, and they all deserve whatever blame they get. Because they're in positions of leadership and they're not doing the things that you need them to do to make your life minimally acceptable. We are way below the acceptable level. Am I saying something crazy?
Yeah.
But what I also noticed is that nobody would say Ellen Rosenblum's name. That was never mentioned. Oregon's top cop, all of this dysfunction, and this was the person who pushed the bill in 2017 to the first decriminalization bill that actually led to ballot measure 110 was Ellen Rosenblum. She is then the Mount Rushmore of the dysfunction and the problems that you're experiencing right now. So when elected as Oregon's next AG, the first thing I'm going to do is address crime. And to get very specific, drug trafficking. Oregon is becoming a depot state where the international and national drug cartels are coming here and using this as a distribution center. Can you imagine that? We're like Amazon for drugs. That's what Oregon has now become. It's funny but not funny. And if you're in law enforcement or you know much about it at all, I'm sure all of you watch CSI, Law and Order, all of these things. But in seriousness, drug trafficking is this pillar of which all other crimes cascade. Human trafficking, theft, vandalism. Who was it? Ms. Drazen said the key words, how do you get your drugs? However I can. And that is almost always criminal in that they commit a crime or they are exploited by somebody else in the name of crime. So we have to address drug trafficking interstate. It has to happen yesterday. It has to happen soon, and it has to happen aggressively. And you can count on me to do that. I've been taking on criminal organizations my whole life. Here in Oregon, in Uganda, I guarantee you, working in northern Uganda with ex-militants was not easy, and it was quite scary. And I've done that in Ghana as well, and I'm going to do it here in Oregon as soon as people elect me to do that. The second thing is corruption. Who would have thought? I'm joined by a colleague, Trey Rosser, and he was talking about the attorney. When I first met him, he said, "I'm glad you're not running for I'm sorry, Trey, to call you up." He said, "I'm glad you're not running for Secretary of State because we have a really strong Secretary of State. I don't think somebody could beat her." About 2 weeks later, this guy is a genius. So the point is that the corruption that we've seen bubble up, it usually starts at the grassroots level and it bubbles up all the way to the state. It's quite shocking for a state like Oregon. This is not who we are. This is not what happens here. If you've lived here for a long time, you would know there's always pockets of corruption. That's not who we are. And it needs to be dealt with swiftly. If people who are engaging in corruption aren't held aggressively accountable, they won't stop and everybody else will see it and they'll do it too. Because it's worth the risk. It has to be dealt with, people. It has to be dealt with and has to be dealt with now. And lastly, I don't know if this applies to you, but it does to so many businesses, agriculture, natural resources, agency overreach. Our bureaucracies are unchecked. It's the role of the AG to tell each of these agencies under the governor that these are the rules, this is the law, and you can't go past it. But so often, they are. They're going beyond what they're allowed to do, and it's smashing business, and it's smashing commerce and progress. And so, as Attorney General, it's not really that sexy to say it, but we're just going to make the agencies, wait for it,
Accountable.
Follow the law. Make them accountable. That's all it's good that it is. So that's my platform. These aren't partisan things. These aren't Republican or Democratic things. you go to anybody and ask them, is crime a problem? Do you want to see it reduced? They'll say yes. Is corruption a problem? You want that reduced? They'll say yes. And should bureaucracies follow the law and follow their own rules? Absolutely they should. We've got to the point where we don't even do the simple things that make a government work, that make communities thrive. We don't do the simple things, and you can count on me as Attorney General to do those simple things that don't get you in the spotlight. They're not going to make a movie about it, but it just allows people to live their lives in a peaceful way. So that's me. I believe this is a very winnable election. Very winnable election. If not now, when are people going to be ready for some change? If not now, when? If things are as bad as you're saying they are, and I drove around, my brother used to live on 49th and Holgate, which I don't think is in this neighborhood, but it's not far.
It's close.
And I would stay with him very, very often through law school, and this isn't the same place. It's never been the West Hills, but it's just not the same place. And this isn't the only place like this. These aren't the only conversations I've had around this. So we've got to take it back, and we've got to take it back soon. I promised at the beginning I'd ask you some questions to try to embarrass you. Now I ask you to ask me some questions in an effort not to embarrass me. What questions do people have for me? Yes, ma'am.
So when I tell Mark I always threaten them with the Attorney General. Can I continue to do that? I tell them I'm going to get $1,000 if they continue to call me.
Yeah, I mean, one of the roles of the Attorney General is consumer protection. Yes.
And when are you up for election?
It's 2024. So
May, November, November,
So
yes.
the filing date is about a month away, then primaries in May, and then the election.
So you said that you have dealt with, I saw the movie Sound of Freedom, so, which I thought was an excellent movie. So I assume as Attorney General you can do some of that stuff also on human trafficking. Did you mention that or no?
Yeah. So by statute, the Attorney General is supposed to be in charge of investigating all organized crime in Oregon. That would be absolutely drug trafficking, human trafficking, organized retail theft. Are you having problems with organized retail theft in your communities?
Yes.
These are the things that the Attorney General is responsible for. And honestly, it's very difficult for somebody at the local level to deal with those things because human trafficking moves. It's a mobile crime. It goes even across our state borders. It requires somebody who's going to plug into AGs in other states and with the federal government as well to get inside of these supply chains and actually start to root them out. Even if you change your DA, even if you change your chief of police or your mayor, human trafficking and drug trafficking is bigger than this city and it's bigger than this county and has to be hit at a higher level. So yes. Yes, sir.
How is it that the AG gets the evidence? Don't you have to rely on the state police to give you evidence so that you can prosecute?
No. By statute, the AG's office is charged with investigating and has investigators in their office. Yeah. They just aren't doing. Honestly, I don't know why. They just aren't doing. The current administration is not responsive to drug crime at all, and I think it probably has to do with their role in decriminalizing drugs in the first place.
And would you look into that then on that role as Attorney General for that being, even though it's a decriminalized situation, would you find those agencies, so to speak, the police department or whatever that, because that's a big one.
Decriminalization of drugs, what agency or where does that responsibility go to?
So common possession of hard street drugs it's illegal in the sense that you can get a ticket for it, but it's no longer punishable by jail or prison. It was never punishable by jail. But trafficking of drugs has remained a crime and is usually mandatory prison. And so that mechanism to hold people accountable is still there. It's just sitting dormant. It's just not being used to the degree that it should be.
Through the police department that kind of has that sit dormant, so that would be where you would be investigating.
So you're plugging in with your investigators are plugging in with county and city police and working together collaboratively across the state to attack the drug cartel as it moves around.
So mainly the police.
Yeah. And district attorneys.
And district. Okay.
my question is actually related to that. So the cartels have moved into southern Oregon, and it seems like it's pretty bad down there. Can you bring in the feds? Because these people are dangerous. They're coming across the border now with guns. It doesn't seem to me like Oregon is equipped for this.
Not only you say, will I, by statute, the Attorney General is mandated to do that. So
But
yes.
she's not doing it.
She's just not doing
you
it.
would do that.
Does anybody know why she's not doing it? She said, would we bring in the feds? Would you include the federal government, as in a DEA, FBI? And actually the AG is supposed to run clearinghouse between the most local police department in Joseph, Oregon, Portland PD, the DEA, Oregon State Police. It's supposed to run central control and can coordinate everybody together to make sure that they're addressing the problem. And it's completely disjointed, it's dysfunctional, it's shut down. There's no other way to describe it. Yeah. Did you guys get that one now?
Basically, she's responsible to be doing it, but she's not, and you would.
Yeah, and it's not. This isn't a tax issue, and this is not a budget allocation issue. The Department of Justice, so I think the AG's budget is something like $700 million, or it's a allocating money to where the problem is issue, and you can count on me to do that.
In your opinion, why isn't the current Attorney General doing their job?
I just don't know her, and I don't feel comfortable saying why. I just know what I see and what people from the inside Department of Justice tell me. But I mean, the proof is sort of in the pudding. I don't know why.
So the human trafficking issue is here.
Oh yeah.
It's here in this area big time.
Oh yeah.
It's just in the last few days they cleaned up. I don't know if they heard there were some people coming into the neighborhood. It's been the first time in 6 years that I've seen one particular area cleaned up. That is human trafficking. But it is happening all around our schools. One person mentioned around the daycare. These are our future. I mean, there's no one that seems to be interested in not our generation, but the future generation to come is threatened. And the human trafficking is big time here. And you'll see them right outside of buses as they get off the school bus, trying to go home and go down the sidewalk. They're parked right there. They're approaching our children. It's unbelievable what's happened in this area.
It's shocking, and you're right. Addiction creates vulnerability. That vulnerability creates exploitation. It always leads to things like human trafficking. So we're the #1 addicted state in America. You can guarantee if you're the #1 addicted state in America, you're going to be almost #1 in a lot of other things, which we are. And human trafficking is one of those things. Yes, sir.
Question about murders, okay, shootings. Who's shooting who? Who's getting murdered? Is it gang people, or is it?
Are you interrogating me right now? I didn't shoot anybody. You're saying who's doing it?
Yeah, I mean, is it a certain class of people? Is it primarily gangs?
I wouldn't know at the granular level. I just know that Portland set a murder record last year, and everything seems to plug together. We're decriminalizing drugs. That makes Portland particularly, but all of Oregon has become a drugs tourism state. So you have people flooding here who want to use drugs without being bothered. And then there seems to be a lot of violent crime coming with this. So it's just a 1 + 1 = 2 situation. I would imagine a lot of it has to do with drugs. Yeah. But that's an imagine, not a professional opinion. Yeah.
Does the AG have any influence on things like where repeat offenders have little accountability and the county DA he's not prosecuting it to the extent that citizens want him to? Does AG have any influence on that?
Yeah, it's tricky, but it's like saying it in a very simple way. The Attorney General can override the behavior of a DA or the local police. There's like a minimum standard in each county. You can't just say we're not going to prosecute domestic violence. We think it's okay in Portland. There's a minimum standard, but it requires collaboration between the Attorney General and the governor. It's one of the areas where the governor has to say it's gotten to this point. I want the Attorney General to come in and do something about it. And I don't know what COTEC would do with that.
Okay.
I'm going to go here first and then to you.
No,
Chris.
no.
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Isn't this in line though with Washington, California, and Oregon? Aren't they, the three AGs, aren't they all kind of trying to do this new justice? You know right?
Yeah, they're kind of in the same spot.
You know, the prisons are too crowded, maybe we could do something else, you know, I mean, they tried something and it definitely failed, so forth, but, you know, so I think it's the whole West Coast. You know, so it's not just us.
Yeah, it is bizarre to say I'm running as a counterculture attorney general because I'm going to do the most simple thing, which is enforce the laws that the people created. But that is what you're stating is a movement that's particularly on the West Coast. Yeah, that has failed everywhere it's been. Yes, ma'am.
That's really
Can I mention it? And how, in your honest opinion, how do you feel about your approach going against the current governor then with this?
I don't,
you obviously see it's a broken system.
Would know the current governor better than I do, but I will say this: it's not just her. There's going to be a lot of people. I'm not going to be popular with a lot of current elected officials. When you hear somebody say we're going to put people that are corrupt in jail, I think I've lost a lot of friends that are in government already, but just by saying that. And I think there are a lot of people that started this human experiment. They got sold a bill of goods, and they haven't changed it. They could have changed it. Ms. Kotek talked to, oh boy. Ms. Here's what made my blood boil recently. I listened to the legislator talk. I listened to your majority leaders in both the House and the Senate say these words. Ballot measure 110 hasn't failed. We just need to give it more time. Right. More time for what? How many people need to die before we say we're not going to experiment on Oregon anymore? Isn't that the most asinine thing you've ever heard in your life? So I'm not going to be popular with those people because if you come and you just speak the truth, they bet on the wrong thing and they look bad now. And what humble people do, what servant leaders do when they make the wrong decision is they correct it and they say, I'm sorry. What arrogant, self-serving leaders do when they make the wrong decision is they blame something else, they blame you, they blame the circumstances, they blame the lack of housing, and they say we couldn't do anything about it. I'm not that person, and those people are not going to like me. I think I'm winning now, so I'm going to take one more question, and are you Jeff? Yeah. And I'm going to let Jeff speak because I think I'm in his time.
Do you have a campaign manager and a campaign that's going to help you?
If I have the best campaign, he's here right now. The campaign will be won or lost on my ability to execute and your ability to support me. I can't run alone, and I wouldn't try if I could. If you're interested in supporting me, ask me. You could support me financially. You could sign up to be on our newsletter. You can even kind of volunteer. This is the battleground, people. Like, this is where I have to win this election. And so if you have somewhere else you'd like me to speak, just somewhere where I could get my message out, my name out, I'm happy to do that. And I have some flyers and some envelopes here for anybody who's interested afterwards. Thanks. Thank you. Oh yeah.
Plug your website.
My website is willathrop.com. Willathrop.com. It's my name.com.
All right, everybody. My name is Jeff Merrick. I'm an attorney, but I'm going to start by asking you a multiple choice question. Your choices are scream, puke, or neither. Scream, puke, or neither are your choices, and the question is, the next time someone tells me to call one point of contact, I'm going to puke. Puke. Neither. Okay.
Both.
So anyways, there's two things I want to talk about tonight, and that's how do we feel a little bit more empowered by things, and how litigation can play into this. And we've seen how litigation has hamstrung, I think, some of our leaders because the homeless people get somebody to advocate for them, they get a lawsuit, it gets settled without any fight, and then there's more rules and stuff. And one of the things that's going to happen is there's a group that's going to sue against this anti-camping law. So we finally got this anti-camping law, and a group of homeless are promising to sue about it. And one of the things I'd like to do is to recruit a couple people who have been hurt by overnight camping and who might want to intervene in that lawsuit and say, no, we like the law. So if there's anybody you know who might be willing to do that, contact me. Somebody who's like living on the other side of the fence from, a nightmare, something like that. People who've really been affected by overnight camping, I'd love to get them and see if they'd be willing to intervene when this lawsuit comes in October. So that's number one. And the other thing I want to talk about is, what can you do when you got a bad neighbor? And the thing I'm going to talk about is just this legal concept of nuisance. We all know, we've heard the concept of nuisance. It's a legal claim. And the legal claim is basically, if somebody is causing your property problems, a substantial interference, unreasonable interference, they should know better and they're not doing anything better and you're actually hurt by it. That's kind of the 4 things you need to show. Simple enough usually. So that's the basics of it. And then there's who's your neighbor? Is it a private person or the government? If it's a government, there's extra rules. What kind of nuisance? If it's a drug house, if it's a house of prostitution, if it's an animal cruelty thing where they're doing dog fights, there's separate rules that are actually better rules to use. So there's, who are you? Who's the property owner that's causing problems? And what's actually happening on those properties. So that's kind of the overall thought is, how do you do that? And you can do it. And the thing I want to emphasize is, it's hard to get lawyers. But for the right cases, you can do it yourself. You can go to small claims court up to $10,000. And you're thinking, well, my damages are worth more than $10,000. Well, they are if you can enforce them. But if you can go, my thought is, if you can get, say there's a certain area and there's 5 neighbors around it who are all affected. If they all say, I'm going to take you to small claims court for $10,000 each, and then they do it, and then 6 months later say, the nuisance is still there, I'm going to file another lawsuit for $10,000 each, then maybe, just maybe, these property owners will say, maybe it's cheaper to clean it up, put a fence, and have somebody walk around it once in a while than to keep paying the neighbors $10,000 every 6 months every time they sue in small claims court. So that's kind of my thought, and the thing I'm hoping to encourage you folks to think about is, if I can't get a lawyer, can I do it myself? And if it's a private homeowner or private owner, it's a lot easier than the government, but if it's the government, you can still do it under certain circumstances. And I can I don't kind of bore you with the legal details tonight, but if somebody's really thinking about wanting to do that, I can talk about it some more. But the thing about governments, and this is the biggest difference between an irresponsible property owner as a government versus private. The government has special rules. There was a time in the world where you could not sue the sovereign. You couldn't sue the king. You couldn't sue the government. And so when the government finally said, okay, we're going to allow you to sue us, but we're going to have certain conditions. And one of the conditions is you have to give notice within 180 days of whatever happened that I'm going to sue you. Your state car ran into me last week. I've got injured because a state employee, riding a state car ran into me. Car crash. You have to give them notice before you sue. You have to say, there's a certain letter you write called tort claims notice, and it says, I'm going to sue you. The reason I'm going to sue you is your driver ran a red light and hit me, and I've been hurt by that. And you have to do that within 180 days, otherwise you lose your right to sue. And so for property, it's like, you've been talking about this has been a problem for years, but if you haven't done the right notice, you can only go back 6 months. And so that's the thing, is we can get everybody to at least start doing tort claims notices. It's like, at least, hey, you're on notice. We might sue you. For the last 6 months, we might sue you. And then 6 months from now, you send them another letter saying, I might sue you about the next 6 months. But that's an important thing that's different from government versus a private property owner. So I guess that's the question, is, are your nuisances, it sounds like they're maybe both, but it sounds like you're telling me a lot of it's the government property owners. Yeah.
I would say PBOT probably on your guys', mine's ODOT and PBOT, and so it's definitely the 311 pyramid thing, and then they say that they've reached out, they suggest you to just call 311, and then they delegate it, but then it's a constant battle.
Yeah.
And what about tort versus quality of life? Not everything is a tort.
Well, tort is basically there's breach of contract and there's torts. And the tort can be include mental anguish and stuff. So it's that's just kind of what it is. It's like a big category. There's candy, and there's chocolate candy, there's bonbons, and so tort is like the candy, and then there's like car crashes, nuisances, and stuff like that. So that's kind of the general category. So that's what you need to do. And I brought with me, in case anybody's really interested, an example of what a real basic against a private property owner complaint would look like in a small claims court. And if anybody wants a copy, I'll give it to you. Okay. Sure.
That was one of the criteria. What is hurt? How do you show that in a small claims court?
There's different categories. In any court, you have to have evidence. You have to have evidence that there's really a problem. You have to have evidence that the property owner knows about it and didn't do anything about it, and that they know it's causing you problems. So you have to have proof on everything. And the proof of harm there's a couple things. First of all, is there a reduction in your property value? And the answer is going to be heck yes. And then, well, how do you prove it? Well, there's a case that says a property owner may testify like an expert on their value of their property. And you can say, my property value, if I tried to rent this house, is X dollars a month less than it would have otherwise been. That's evidence. You can put it in. It'd be nicer if you had some other support, but that's something. And then what other damages are caused? Damages is the word. What other damages are caused by the nuisance? And it's like, well, I built a fence. It cost me this much money. I put in security cameras. It cost me this much money. And so there's those kind of out-of-pocket costs. And then there's, I haven't gotten any sleep. I've got a journal of all my problems. My daughter or neighbor knows how upset I've been. I didn't go to, Johnny's concert because I was afraid to leave the house because I saw these people hanging outside, right next door to us. And so it's a matter of, in any case, evidence is either testimony or documents, and documents meaning papers or videos or pictures and things like that. So I would say if you're not already doing it, if you're ever thinking about doing a lawsuit, just get either a Word document or a spiral notebook and just keep a little log. August 10, next door, I saw this. They were shouting till midnight. Or, the next day, same, whatever. And then when you go to court, you can say, I can't remember every day, but I've got notes which would refresh my memory. And I say, oh yeah, now I remember. In August, this is what was going on. And in September, this is what was going on. So you're right, you have to have evidence to prove what's going on. And so yeah, that's what you need. What's that?
Oh, yeah, I just did it.
Photos we've got.
So you're
Video
saying it
surveillance.
has to have happened within the last 180 days?
For the government, yeah.
For the government?
Yeah, if it's a private property owner, it can go back 6 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like ours is weird because it's like it's both Peabot and then the campers are primarily on a bar's back fence, I guess, or back wall, but that's her property and she's not doing anything about
Well,
it.
that's the example of the complaint I brought, because I was thinking about this bar up in North Portland that ended up having fires and everything. So I kind of have that as a rough example, both for a small claims court and a regular court case, because there's certain things you can do in small claims court, like ask for $10,000, but usually you can't ask for an order to say stop it. In regular court, you can go for an order that says, Judge, please order them to stop it and give you money. So that's the difference. In small claims. Right. To stop it. And you can do that in regular court, and there's this one circumstance where if you've got proof that it's like a drug place where they're delivering drugs, then maybe you can go to small claims court to stop it also. Because again, there's little quirks, but that's one of the quirks where if it's a drug place, and the drug place can be bare ground, if it's a drug place where they're delivering drugs, possession of course is out the window now, but if they're delivering the drugs to people, if you can prove that, then you can win that case in small claims court and get them to stop it, not just money.
And I think you said that you started to do it up to twice a year?
Well, you can do it,
every 30 days?
As long as it happens, Really? And so you phrase it is, between this date and that date, this nuisance existed, and it's caused me this problem. And then the next day, from this date to the next 6 months, it was a nuisance that caused me this much problem. And so that's the way I would say, if you want to go the small claims route, is you do it now for the last against government. And against government, it's kind of tough, and there's some quirks that I would want to talk to people about before they did that. But for private, like the private bar, you can go back as long as back to 6 years to get your damages for that. So that's the big difference. Yeah.
So two conditions have to be met: property owner and someone with some money. Is that right? Because you can't do homeless and you can't do someone with no money, right?
Well, it doesn't mean much good, right?
Yes.
But hopefully the property owner, it's do they want to have a judgment against their property? Maybe they don't care, but maybe they do. But again, if they're paying you $10,000 and the other neighbor $10,000, maybe they'll decide maybe it's better to just pay security and keep it clean.
Question. I manage a storage facility. I live above the office. Okay. Mount Scott Road is a mecca for drug dealing, chop shop, a bunch of vehicles, all day, all night. Okay. I don't own it. Can I attack the city for allowing them to stay there, or no? Or am I just
The road might be tough. If it's land, it's a different story. If it's on the road, it's probably.
Well, it's a cul-de-sac.
Yeah, that could be a problem. That could be a problem.
It's Peabody.
Yeah, because I think roads are kind of a different ball game.
Yeah.
That's an area where they're not wanting to take any responsibility.
None. Absolutely.
ODOT, they TriMet, they will not take
On
responsibility.
the other hand, if it's like a highway, if it's within the highway right of way.
It's along the side of 205.
Yeah, if it's within the highway right of way, then you've got a better chance, because like I say, these governments got these defenses. But in fact, these last couple of days I did a legal memo. If it's within the highway right of way, I can get around one of your defenses.
Well, okay. One's right by the belt, next up, okay? I don't know if it's ODOT, Peabody, that owns that fence. But the homeless have cut through that several times. They go on my property looks like crap. I've lost business. They've broken into units from the backside. Nobody will fix that fence.
Nobody will take
Nobody.
responsibility.
I call one, oh, no, that's them. She called it, oh, no, that's them. No, that's them. And I'm getting the runaround.
And you have, videos of people coming through the fences and taking stuff by any chance?
Oh, shoot, you want to see stuff?
Okay. I mean, that's the thing. If you can prove that these people are coming from that property and trespassing on your property.
They're coming from the bike lane onto our property.
Yeah, the bike lane, the greenway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's ridiculous, and I won't go back there by myself because I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
I've had all kinds of wonderful things thrown at me.
Yeah, no, there's tough.
I worry about her safety. I think about this woman all the time. She lives
Yeah.
down the street from me. I think about you on a continual basis because that cul-de-sac is what I was talking about.
And that goes back to the
They do not
205
allow
Greenway
her.
lack of safety responsibility of when someone recently that was being filmed in the news in Laurel Porter says, and just for the record on the news, there's a lot of tents over here. And it was an active suspect that they shut down, and he hid through the tents, and you can't bike along this 205. There was probably easily over 100 tents, and they've been there allowed for years. And I say this as I'm not trying to segregate. I'm not anti-homeless. I'm talking about the safety issues of this allowability criminal activity going on. And so these are the things with the ODOT and the Greenway. No one's, like you just said, it's a gray-green area of responsibility. So then that's where all of this stuff is kind of getting pushed. And we have the 205 Greenway going all along the east side, so that's where it gets congregated. It does go in pockets in North Portland that you were on the news for.
Yeah.
But where are the rights for individuals that choose to live on the pathway or next to an ODOT? Those rights are where things are kind of they culminate to these empty pockets of lack of...
They find the little gray areas, right?
Where they leave us, the homeowners suffering for years. And then we're up against we can't do anything.
Yeah, I mean,
we don't feel like we have any rights to feel safe anymore.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is like Todd's saying, if it's Todd's property, he's got to keep it nice. You can't have it, and that's the rules. The rules are, if you're a property owner, whether you're government or not, you got to maintain your property. And if you do cause harm, you should be responsible for it. And that's the basics. And it's like, I don't care, if they had nice tiny homes and they, managed it well and they were all happy neighbors, it'd be different. But they're not. They're not managing their own property, and whether they contract with the city of Portland or, Jane's Quality Landscaping Company, it's their property.
But the Greenway, though, is an inhumane, toxic behavioral trash, pieces kind of thing. And who's responsible for the taxpayers' money for a greenway of a less carbon footprint? I don't understand where that
I'm not
is
sure.
going.
I mean, I looked at the Springwater corridor, and I'm not sure if this is different, but the Springwater corridor...
It goes all the way up.
Seems like that's City of Portland property.
Oh, City of Portland, okay.
But I'm not sure about the greenway there. I mean, that's the thing. There's a website called portlandmaps.com, and you can kind of click on the spots, and it'll tell you often, sometimes not, but usually it'll tell you who the owner is. And that's where, like this afternoon, I said, I wonder who officially owns the Springwater corridor in the City of Portland.
So can small claims sue the City of Portland?
Again, you can, and there's going to be defenses they'll throw at you, but I think it's worth starting to try it.
With more people, would we have a better effect with that?
Well, I think it'd be nice to have one really good case to go forward and see what they throw at you, and do the tort claims notices to protect it for the future, and then see what happens. The other thing about small claims court, the process is you go online, you answer. It's like a quiz. They ask you to put in the questions. You want to have your claim typed up in advance so you can just copy and paste. But after you file it, you have to get it served, and then they force you to have a mediation. So you want to sit down with somebody, they force the parties to sit down and try to mediate before you actually get your day in court. And so that's another part of the process. And at that process, they might start saying, well, we're bulletproof for this reason or that reason. And that's a good way to smoke them out, is say, what are they going to say about it? If they say it's not my property, it's like, okay, then go to the next person. Or you can't sue us over this because of this technical legal defense. It's like, well, then we can maybe try to work around that for the trial. So I mean, that's like I'm saying, maybe it's just a matter of we have to start, like they're doing in Ukraine. You start probing, put the battalions out there and see where the weaknesses are and where we can win.
And so you're willing to support individuals that would want to get something
I'm willing
together?
to donate my time. I'm not willing to donate money, but I'm willing to donate time.
Well, no, I don't know anybody that can donate money to this. Okay, thank you.
That's what I was going to ask about. I haven't asked Jeff this yet, but would you guys want to sit down with Jeff in a different session where we've got a little more time, and he can kind of go over what we need to do to actually realize what he's talking about? Would you guys be interested in maybe hearing from Jeff for a little longer period of time?
Yeah.
Yes.
So Jeff, what is it
afterward?
No price. I'm not doing this for money. I'm just trying to do my part. I feel like it's all hands on deck, and I mean, if I ever actually file a lawsuit for somebody, we have an agreement, and I'd put in $80,000 for the time, and maybe try to get 30% or whatever, a third of what you get, which might be 1/10 of that. But it's I'm willing to try to kind of put my money where my mouth is, which is I've been thinking this ought to be happening for a while, and it's like nobody else is doing it.
I think part of it is the fact that we are so beaten down at this point that it's hard to say, I've got the energy to do this.
Right.
And because every day it's like, you
Yeah, the
got to go
hardest
pick
part-
up the trash, you got to go do this, you got to go do
Yeah.
this, and got to do this, and got to do this. And then it comes up, God, I need to make a change, but I'm exhausted.
Yeah, and I think before I would get involved in any case, and before anybody should get involved in any case, you should really have, okay, what do I have to prove? And do you have all your ducks in a row? Do you have all your evidence lined out, ready to go? And then when that's ready to go, then it's like, okay, let's fire away.
That's what I'm saying. If Jeff's willing to do it, if you guys all signed in with your email so that if Jeff says yes, maybe we could set a time and a place, and we could all get together with Jeff, and Jeff can kind of go through the steps.
Kind of coaching, basically. I think of it more as coaching, than because I think that's what people need, is just a little bit of coaching. What do you have to do to kind of preserve the records and preserve the opportunity to sue later?
Yep.
So I had the same idea myself a few days ago as I was going through every avenue to try to correct the situation, and everyone's saying they don't have to name. So my logical thought was, would it be nice to sue the government? Because I'm not getting called a lot. And I kind of Googled it and talked about indemnity and the government.
Well, that's just like, for example, if you sued the state and they say, well, the problem's really the city, it'd be for the state to go after the city to say, indemnify us.
So is that not?
That's nothing that you would have to worry about. There's other things you have to worry about, but not that one. All right, looks like everybody's saying now.
No, not only because I want to talk to you, I want them to get away.
All right.
Yeah, do you want to get a piece of paper?
Thank you for attending. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.